and welcome back to my channel. And if you're a first-time visitor here, welcome. I hope you find something to make you stay. Today I'm talking about the brand new Netflix documentary, The Pharmacist, which I binged watched last night. It's in 4 parts. This one very much speaks to me. There's everything going on here, from murder to one man's fight for justice to a mass opioid drug epidemic. This story is just up and down, left and right, and I do feel like I have a kind of a personal connection with regards to the drug side of things. If you don't know me, if you're new here, my name is Lisa. I suffer from fibromyalgia and ME, and up until about 2-3 years ago, I was on very high opioid drugs for pain relief for my condition, that I gradually weaned myself off, and the experience was just torture. I'm going to go into that more at the end, and I hope you really do stay about to sort of see that part, because if I'm talking to anyone that has had chronic pain or has taken opioids for this, I'd really like to hear your experiences and what you've got to say about mine. It really interests me, the more people I speak to, the different experiences I get. But anyway, this documentary it delves into that a lot. Something that I would normally cover in one video, the murder at the start of this, is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the start. So I really hope you stay around. I would like to hear what you think at the end. And let's get into talking about The Pharmacist. So our story begins in 1999, and we follow a very respectable middle-class family by the name of the Schneiders. Now, the only way I can describe this family to you is the Griswolds. That's exactly what this family are like. Your typical all-American happy middle-class family, right down to the absolutely mammoth Christmas tree at Christmas, which Mr. Schneider always had to get for the family. This is a family that back then a lot of people didn't really video their family, but this man, he's a man after my own heart. He documents everything. So there's loads of video footage of us to see of the family, of how life normally is for them, of the kids growing up, of Christmases, and this is all inserted. But this man's preoccupation with recording things would go on to be what makes this documentary stand out. We don't have to rely on testimony, we don't have to rely on him telling the story. We can hear recordings start to end that he made at the time that everything was going on. So it's April 3rd, 1999, as I already said, and Dan Schneider's son, called Danny, or after his dad, he's in a bit of difficulty that his family don't know about. Now, this is they're a comfortable family, they're a respectable family. Mr. Schneider is the town pharmacist, he has been since 1975. It looks like there's no issues, there's no problems within this family. But unbeknown to his family, to his parents, his sister, Danny Schneider has actually been suffering with drug addiction. So it's on the night of the 3rd of April that Danny leaves his very affluent, nice respectable area of St. Bernard's Parish in New Orleans, and he travels to a quite rough area of 9th Ward in order to make a deal to get his fix for the night. Something goes wrong on this deal, and unfortunately Danny is shot and killed. Now, you would think this is what the entire documentary is about, and usually what I would cover, a murder, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. That is just what starts this whole completely unbelievable ball rolling. So Dan Schneider learns that this is not unusual, and he is completely appalled by the lack of police interest in the case. They see it as like a spoiled rich white kid from an affluent area with a drug problem being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And of course, no one saw anything, no one is saying anything, and even if they did, most people are too frightened to come forward, because we're talking about drug dealers here. We're talking about the type of people you do not want to get on the wrong side of. So there's no answers, but Dan Schneider, he is not willing to let his son's death pass without getting to the bottom of what happened and who was responsible. So he actually launches, against police advice, the police actually try to get him to stay out of the whole thing. He launches his own investigation to try to get to the bottom of what happened to his son. They actually raise money and put up a reward of $10,000. Still nothing's happening until 5 weeks in. So a young man called Jeffrey Hall comes forward and says that he actually saw everything happen from start to finish. He actually admits that he did usually deal with Danny, so he did actually sell drugs. He was only 16 years old, which was quite shocking for me that a 16-year-old was dealing drugs. He said, "I would normally have dealt with Danny and I should have been dealing with Danny, but someone else came and stepped in, got in the way and shot Danny." And he says that he can ID who this person is and who is responsible. So Jeffrey gives a name. He identifies who he says is responsible for Danny's murder, but unfortunately the person's name that he gives was actually in prison at the time, serving sentence for an unrelated crime. So the police put him down as a witness that can't be used, an unreliable witness, and there's nothing else they can do with Jeffrey. When Dan speaks to Jeffrey, he said he felt very let down. He trusted this young man. He spoke to this young man at length, and he believed what this young man was saying. And he said, "Well, why did you give this guy's name? Is this the guy?" And he said, "I was frightened. I didn't want to tell the truth because of the possible repercussions." So he has Dan thinking that he does know who did it, but he won't tell who did it because he doesn't want the repercussions. He doesn't want someone to kill him. So Dan proceeds with his investigation again, going door to door around the area in which his son was murdered. And it's not very much appreciated, this middle class white man coming around asking questions about their area and about drug dealers. And he's not met with a lot of positivity, understandably, I suppose, in the area. He also calls pretty much everyone. He goes through that phone book and he finds everyone that lives in a vicinity. And eventually, after much, much persistence, he hits gold. He speaks to a lady, a mother in the area by the name of Shane Redding, who actually saw everything that happened from her home, from start to finish. Not only did she see everything that happened, she actually has contacted the police, the Crime Stoppers number, on 3 occasions, even chased up to see what was happening given her statement. And it seems that nothing whatsoever has happened with the information that she has provided to the police. Now obviously Dan is incensed by this and he asks Shane if she would be willing to testify. At this stage, Dan is recording everything on a trusty little tape recorder in the hope that one day in his investigation he will be able to present this evidence at court. He's recording not only telephone calls he has with everyone, discussions he has with everyone, including Jeffrey and Shane, the police, and the manner in which the local police spoke to him was disgusting, I have to say, and he has that all on tape. I think they saw him as a bit of a pain in the backside. He was never off the phone. He was like a dog with a bone that he would not let go. He was going to get to the bottom of what happened to his son, if it meant pissing off every single police officer in the entire town that he lived in.
Alright, Dan. We're not being recorded again, are we? No.
So Shane said she would testify, but she was understandably very frightened for her and her children's safety. It was then that her property started to get damaged. Someone threw a brick through the window of her car, and they said that if she testified in court that her and her children would be murdered. So understandably, she's a bit reticent. She's not too sure if she wants to go ahead. And she actually asks to come to the Schneider's home and to see Danny's bedroom. She comes to the home. She's a mother herself. She sees all the photos on the wall like you would in any normal family. She goes into Danny's bedroom and that makes him a real person to her. She sees the wasted potential, the life that he could have had, what happened, and she knows that she is the only person that has any ability to get justice for this family. And very, very bravely, Shane says, "Yes, I will testify. I will stand up in court and I will say what I saw." But what she is going to say and who she is going to accuse is going to shock everyone. She points the finger squarely at the first witness, Jeffrey Hall. And it does come to pass and does happen. This obviously is much longer winded in the documentary, but I don't want to dwell too long on one thing. Jeffrey Hall eventually does admit that he is responsible. It's the first person he's ever shot. He describes how he felt and how his hand stung when he pulled the trigger, his regrets for what he did. He is a minor, he's very young, and he does go to prison, but only for 15 years. But our story doesn't stop with the arrest and the incarceration of Jeffrey Hall. This is just the start of a major campaign by Dan Schneider to try and stop what's happening to the youth in the area, to try and stop what happened to his son happening again. So as I've already said, Dan was actually the town pharmacist, and he started noticing an awful lot, scores of 18 to 25-year-olds coming in with identical prescriptions. These prescriptions were for a drug called OxyContin. Now, if you're in the US, you probably know exactly what that is. For anyone else, as I wasn't aware myself, we don't have it here. It's a very, very strong opioid painkiller used for chronic pain. This was usually prescribed at 80 milligrams, which is a very, very high dose. Usually, anyone that knows that's had opioids for pain, the doctors do start you on a lower dose and they slowly increase it until they get the dose that helps with your pain. And at least it's been like that in my case, and most other people I know. But so scores of these 18 to 25-year-olds, these young people, were coming in with identical prescriptions for 80 milligrams of OxyContin paired with two other drugs, Soma and Xanax. This was actually referred to as the Holy Trinity and had a very similar effect to heroin. Now, Dan was obviously very concerned and perplexed. He watched these individuals come in. None of them were in crutches, none of them were in wheelchairs, none of them seemed to be showing signs of the level of chronic pain that would need that high a dosage of this drug, as this was a high dosage. He questioned individuals, as a lot of pharmacists are actually meant to do if you're actually getting high. In the UK, if you go into a pharmacist and you ask for cocodamol, which is an over-the-counter painkiller, not prescription, you are usually quizzed about it. There are rules even in supermarkets that you may not buy more than one box of a painkiller, just in case of it, but nothing to stop you going to different places. But my point is, he was doing what a responsible pharmacist should do, but word got around that this pharmacist was asking too many questions, and a lot of people started to go elsewhere. Dan got in trouble with his boss at the pharmacy for asking too many questions of too many people, and he was asked to stop it. And he put forward his concerns and his worries, and he was told, well, these have been prescribed by a doctor. It's not up to you to question that doctor. And even though these prescriptions were almost identical in how they'd been written, in the dosages for all these different patients, and they had all been written by exactly the same doctor, a Jacqueline Claggett. It seems that Jacqueline Claggett was a pioneer in the pill mill industry, which is basically shady doctors selling prescriptions for a very high amount of money to people that don't need them, basically just in a money-making enterprise. And not going into all the ins and outs, watch the documentary yourself, it is very well worth watching. Dan uncovers that she's doing this. He actually manages to speak to a young man who knew his son, who had a car accident and was on these drugs himself, and he wanted out. He wanted off the drugs, but it's so difficult to come off opioids, so difficult. And he worked together with this young man. They went to the DEA to make them aware. The DEA said they had been working on this case and were aware of Jacqueline Claggett and had been here. Now that's a year of young people being given drugs that they do not need, getting addicted, the same as heroin addicts, some of them ODing, dying, and the numbers of people ODing was climbing every month. And the DEA's office, it's been over a year and they're still working on this. I was aghast. Why is it taken? And obviously Dan Schneider's completely aghast, and he has video footage from outside videoing people. This young man that's been inside is saying what happens, is saying people will wait for days, is saying people will deal with one another, will go get the drugs and sell them for an inflated amount to someone that's got 2 days left to wait. And also, interestingly, this young man works for a computer firm that repairs computers. It may have been a printer, I don't know exactly. And he gets a call from Jacqueline Cleggett's office. They have a broken piece of equipment, so he is sent out to repair it, which he does. And in payment, he is given a prescription of the OxyContin from Jacqueline Claggett, and he says, well, I have to go back to my place of work and they're going to expect payment for this, not this. I need you to pay me for the services. She goes back into her office. Now, it's to be noted there is a police officer at her office, it seems, at all times, who seems to be more than aware of what's happening. He comes back out of Jacqueline's office and says, I advise you to take the prescription and leave now. And he goes. He said he doesn't wait, he doesn't argue, off he goes. So it seems more people are involved in this than just Jacqueline Claggett. So they go to the DEA with all this information. They're both interviewed separately, Dan and this young man, and they still don't seem to be in any rush to do anything about it. And Dan is virtually tearing his hair out at this stage. He's watching all these young people fall into that trap that in the end got his son murdered. Eventually, completely frustrated with the lack of action from the DEA, Dan Schneider goes to the State Board of Medical Directors and successfully manages to get Jacqueline Cleggett's license suspended. As I've said before, there is a lot of things going on in the background of this that I won't go into. Dan Schneider's being followed by people in cars that he suspects is from the DEA, who are sick and tired of this man on the phone asking them what they're going to do. He records everything. He records being followed, he records the telephone calls he makes from the DEA car park saying, I'm out here, someone's following me, who is it? He records everything.
I am being followed.
We sounded crazy.
I think they waving a gun at me. Help me God, and hopefully anybody else who hears this, because I'm losing it.
And this just must have been a gold mine for the people that went on to make this documentary. You've got what? You've got that? Awesome, fantastic. So this has taken some time. Obviously, he lost his son in 1999, but on the 14th of February 2002, Jacqueline Claggett officially has her license revoked and she is forced to close down her clinic. But they need a smoking gun to indict her. Thankfully for Dan, someone he went to school with is actually an attorney in the area and he works closely with him, and they decide they want to get this woman for what she's done, but the DEA are so slow. They need a smoking gun. They need something to be able to go and hold up and say, this is proof that this woman is breaking the law. And this so happens to come into the pharmacy one day. Dan is working as normal. He has left his trusty recorder at home, unfortunately, as his boss has made that a condition of keeping him employed. His boss has just had it up to here with Dan by now, recording customers and questioning them about prescriptions. So he says, yes, you can continue to work here, but you mustn't question customers about prescriptions and you mustn't record conversations. Dan does admit he doesn't altogether listen to this at all times, and he still does record some conversations, but he this day has left the recorder at home. And a young girl skips, and he said literally skips, into the pharmacy. She is no more than 100 pounds in weight, he says. Obviously this makes a difference as to the power of the drugs that you should prescribe, and she comes in with her mother with that same prescription for the Holy Trinity of OxyContin, Soma and Xanax. And he questions the mother, is this for her? Yes. What's it for? And she goes into detail about terrible pain that this young girl that just skipped into the office, as nice as you like, has. He suspected that this was possibly for the mother. Anyway, he looked at that and he said to the mother, this could potentially kill your daughter. This is an overdose. This is too high a strength prescription that you've been given for this girl. But then he thinks, all along he has actually photocopied all of the prescriptions. He has got boxes and boxes and boxes of tape recordings, photocopies, videos, you name it. This man was on fire. So he actually thinks, well, she'll just deny having written it and she'll say it was forged by someone else. So he picks up the phone and he phones Jacqueline Claggett and he says, it's whatever the name of the pharmacy is. Can I just confirm that you have written this prescription? Gives the details. Yes, I certainly have. And when he says to her, you do understand that this is an overdose for the patient that you've prescribed this to? I can't remember the exact words, but she is very rude to him. She swears and asks him something along the line of, well, are you a fucking doctor now? And hangs up the phone. And he's got exactly what he needs. He goes to a solicitor friend with this, and this information, as well as everything collected from the DEA's office, they go ahead to indict Jacqueline Claggett on 37 different points. However, whilst waiting on trial, Jacqueline Claggett has a very serious car accident. She is asleep in the passenger seat and the driver hits a bank of trees at, she says, 80 miles per hour. She suffers quite serious injuries. She has the same injuries as people that used to be hung would have, called a hangman's break in their neck. She had 2 brain hemorrhages. She was in ICU for a number of weeks, had to be intubated. She wasn't a well woman. And due to her physical condition, and due to a plea bargain that she actually took with the state, she only was indicted on 1 of 37 charges. Previously, she had been facing 20 years in prison and a $1 million fine. This woman made almost $2 million in 1 year with her OxyContin business. We actually in the documentary see Jacqueline interviewed, and to this day she does not feel that she did anything wrong. In fact, she says the one point that she is indicted on, that she said that she did, she doesn't agree that she did that. She only said she did to get the deal. She says that when she was coming round from her operation, she was prescribed OxyContin and she was absolutely fine. There wasn't a problem. They didn't know what anyone was talking about. But she had short-term serious pain following a car accident, and this is the prime candidate that you use strong opioid medication on. But on patients with long-term chronic pain, you do not prescribe high doses of opioids, because what happens when those opioids stop working eventually, which happened in my case, and that pain hasn't gone away, then what? What do you do? The person's addicted. So she's absolutely not reverent at all. She doesn't think she's done anything wrong. She's got no apology to make to anyone. And this goes on in the documentary to open up so many shady doctors doing exactly the same. The knock-on effect of this is, although Dan Schneider managed to actually get her removed from practice, and he actually also managed to get a law introduced so pharmacies could actually compare. A person couldn't go to several different pharmacies and get different prescriptions because they could see what that person had been given and where from. So that was also introduced. So that massively cut down the OxyContin prescriptions. Unfortunately, all these addicts had to do something. So the heroin addiction rate, the heroin sales rocketed. These people had to get their high somewhere, and that's what they were going to do. Amidst all this, unfortunately, New Orleans also was hit with Hurricane Katrina, and as we know, so many people lost everything. And people that were already addicted, and this isn't people that we see sitting on street corners in a stupor, homeless. This is normal people. This is people that need to go out and do a job that initially was prescribed something quite possibly because they needed it, then got addicted, couldn't get off it, and were not able to function without it. And these doctors have put these individuals in this position by malpractice. There's no other word for it. Talking about malpractice, the company Purdue Pharma that actually makes the OxyContin actually stated that it was less addictive, and as one sales rep said, less addictive than what? They have outwardly lied, and they have been found in a court of law to have lied to promote their product. This family, the Sacklers, just get richer and richer, and they are worth billions. They are worth more than the actual court of appeal that wants to take them to court. They could afford to go to court time and time and time again where the state couldn't. So how are we supposed to put a stop to these people? So they were eventually found to have misrepresented their medication, and to be describing it as not addictive was just a lie. But the irony is the Sackler family, who own Purdue Pharma, are now offering services to manage addiction. To manage addiction to a problem that they themselves created by complete false advertising. The mind boggles. And this is a problem it showed the map of America, and it showed the spread. And this is worldwide. This is not just obviously an American problem, but it's just staggering, and this documentary blows it wide open, and I would very, very much recommend that you watch the documentary. But I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts below. Just to give an indication of how I tie into this, as I say, I have fibromyalgia and ME, and I was prescribed a drug called Lyrica a number of years ago. This is a very strong drug. I went through 6 to 8 months of absolute torture. Migraines constantly, nausea, inability to eat, dizziness. It was horrible. It was. I don't actually work due to chronic pain, and I remember thinking if I had to go out and do a job right now, I physically couldn't. And that made me think these people probably can't stop, because this drug leaves you completely unable, coming off this drug leaves you completely unable to do anything. And the amount of people on that help group that had tried and gone back on because they just couldn't deal with the coming off. And I never thought I'd be right again. It was a really scary time, but a lot of people said, stick at it, you will get there. You will feel normal again. Or well, my normal. I do still feel pain every day. I'm in a lot of pain. But I was still in a lot of pain when I was taking these drugs. I did eventually get off Lyrica entirely. I'm off tramadol entirely now. I don't take any prescription painkillers for my condition. I just manage it. That's all you can do. Well, maybe some people have positive outcomes, positive results from different pain medication, but I would very much encourage you, if you take pain medication for any condition, to look properly into that, to the time scale you should be taking it. And if you feel that you're not getting any relief from it, then go to speak to your GP, consider trying to get off it, try something else. But for me, having tried I was taken off tramadol and Lyrica, and the doctor suggested pregabalin, which I also tried with disastrous effects. I've been put on drugs where I felt suicidal, and just the most deep depression that I've ever felt in my life, and I don't suffer from depression. I was just in a black hole, and these were all side effects from drugs that I hadn't been given proper information about when they'd been prescribed. So this documentary really, really spoke to me about these people and the position they were being put in by trusting these doctors. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people going to see Jacqueline Claggett were going for a hit, were going for a high, and they knew what they were doing. But just the same, an awful lot of people were going that were genuine sufferers of chronic pain that got hooked to something that they'd never be able to get off and would progress onto heroin. And I'm just very grateful that I managed to come out the other side of my experience. So if you're watching this and you suffer from chronic pain, if you're on any medications, I'd be really interested to hear your experiences. Or if you've seen the documentary, what you thought, let me know below. I look forward to speaking to you next time. Over and out from Lisa Lives.